Good evening or good afternoon, everybody. My name is Charlene Margot. I am co-founder of nonprofit The Parent Venture, the organization that brings you this program, the Parent Education Series. We are so glad to have you with us today for Parent Forum number 15 in English. The Parent Forums are offered in both English and Spanish throughout the year, and we are delighted to have with us again our featured keynote presenter, Dr. Eran Magen. Before I tell you a little bit more about him, I want to say thank you to the Sequoia Healthcare District for their sponsorship of these parent forums for the last 2 years. They have been a great way for us to gather virtually as parents on topics of import. Today's topic, rather, I should say, is building trust and goodwill with your child or teen, which strikes me as a uniquely important thing for us to be doing, especially now that kids are back in school and things are kind of changing with the pandemic. Again, we want to thank both Sequoia Healthcare District, Sequoia Union High School District, and this organization, the Parent Venture. For those of you who are new to us today, we want to say this is a meeting format. So the event is being recorded, but we will actually only record the opening content portion of the talk. After that, we're going to open it up to you, the audience, so that you can participate with Dr. Magen. And that part, we turn the cameras off to ensure that we maintain privacy for everyone. So Eran will be speaking for 20-25 minutes or so, and you will be seeing comments and resources in the chat put up by my co-founder, Bev Hartman. If you have questions for Eran or me to ask him, please do put those in the Q&A box. So comments, resource links in the chat, questions. I'm sorry, there's not a Q&A button today. So your questions in the chat as well. And Dr. Magen will be asking you periodically to give your input. We really want to hear from you today since this is a virtual parent discussion group. Again, the recording will be available soon on our video library. We partner with the Boys and Girls Club of the Peninsula to produce our videos. It usually takes them a few days to get it posted. Okay, let me tell you a little bit about today's featured presenter. Dr. Eran Magen is the founder of Parenting for Humans, a judgment-free, relationships-first approach to parenting that gives parents tools to enjoy stronger, more joyful relationships with their children and themselves. He is also the founder of Early Alert, which works with hospitals, universities, public schools, and first responder agencies to provide suicide prevention and promote wellness among students and employees. Dr. Magen earned his master's in education and PhD in psychology from Stanford University and completed his postdoctoral training in population health as a Robert Wood Johnson Health and Society Scholar. His work has been published in top-tier scientific journals, including Psychological Science, Emotion, and Academic Pediatrics, and has been cited in popular media ranging from Allure magazine to Psychology Today. Eran, please join us.
Ta-da! Thank you, Charlene. Hello, everybody. Thank you for giving part of your Friday. Thank you for the wave, Ben and Craig. Also, Maria, instant parent credibility for showing up in front of all those toys. Those of you who are inspired to turn on your video cameras, I think that's really nice. And then we can all see each other and feel like there's a bunch of us here that are all going through the same adventure. Also, it's nice, not to be talking into the void from my side, but I feel well supported today with everybody on there. Thank you, Lisa. Hello. So I'll go through what I think of as fundamentals of building trust with their kids and how to do that. At the bottom of this slide is a URL, and I'll show you that same URL on the last slide too, in case you want to download any of these slides. So don't feel like you need to be, writing anything quickly. Although if you're inspired to write stuff down, then by all means. All right, this is the part that I'm really glad I'm reminding myself every time. So you're here because you're awesome and you want to learn how to be even better, right? Whatever small polishes you can make to be even better parents. But just the mere fact that you're here shows how seriously you take this whole parenting business. And so good for you for just making time for that. And since I can't reach you through Zoom, and it would probably be creepy if I could, then give yourself a pat on the back. Good work just for making the time and making this a priority to just spend some time thinking about how to parent. Also, I want to say that I'll be saying a lot of things here, which I really hope will make sense to you, but two important disclaimers. One, I don't claim to have any kind of ownership over the truth. So if you disagree, that's fine. And we can discuss it, or you can just ignore what I say, but I'm not pretending to know everything at all. And two, maybe more importantly also, is that I believe everything I'm going to tell you, and everything is based either on stuff that I've studied or experienced, or usually both. But having said all this, it's not like I do any of this stuff perfectly and all the time, right? So just to be clear, you're among friends here. This is not coming on from down high. Okay, having said this, trust and goodwill. Trust and goodwill, I think, is so important between people in general, and definitely with our kids, because when the relationship is good, everything is easy. And when the relationship is bad, everything is hard. So there are lots of things that you might want to be working on with your kids, lots of things that you might want your child to do differently, or for the two of you to be doing differently. But everything becomes easier when the relationship is good, which is why I generally strongly recommend to focus on the relationship all of the time, unless it's an actual emergency, right? If a child is sitting on a road and there's a semi-trailer speeding in that direction, then of course, you don't spend time being nice, you yank. And similarly with other dangerous things that may be happening, you do what you need to make sure the child is safe and is not making any kind of irreparable mistakes. But short of that, I prioritize the relationship every time. I'd rather be a little late everywhere, not all the time, but I'd rather be a little late than hurt the relationship, right? I'd rather achieve a little less than hurt the relationship. I prioritize the relationship really explicitly all the time. So I think of the relationship as essentially a bank account that has an amount of goodwill that got deposited into it. It's the amount of goodwill that my child has toward me. There's also the reverse. How much goodwill do I have toward my child? It's a separate thing. It's not that there's one bank account and both of us draw from it and both of us put into it. I have an account with my child, right? My child is a bank, and my child has many accounts for all of his relationships. In my case, it's a his. He has many accounts for all of his relationships, right? He has an account for me. He has an account for his friends. He has an account for his teachers, for each of them separately. And my goal is to make the account balance, the relational account balance, as high as possible with my kid, because then he extends me credit all the time, and it makes everything easier. Okay, so I really think about it like a relational bank account, and I think about the account balance a lot. And the account balance matters a great deal. So you can be thinking about these levels and kind of imagining where are you in this story, right? So when there's a very high account balance, your child spontaneously goes out of his or her way to be helpful to you, serving you breakfast in bed, writing songs for you and serenading, right? This is like fantasy level, unbelievably high credit. For those of you who do get serenaded by your kids, please tell me how you're doing it. Medium high levels, your child kind of cheerfully agrees and cooperates with whatever you ask, more or less, right? And if you ask more, then maybe less cheerfully or less cooperative, and you ask less maybe. But by and large, everything just feels easy. It just flows because your kid just wants to cooperate because you're on good terms. Low relational balance, maybe your child cooperates, maybe not, right? When you make a request, maybe thinking about it, maybe grumbling, right? There's more friction. Everything is a little harder. As a parent, you have a huge amount of power over your child, whether or not your child wants to acknowledge that. And so you can force your child to do certain things. And when you use that kind of power over your child, you are depleting the account, you're withdrawing from the account, and you have the risk of running into overdraft, essentially. When you have negative relational account balance, when you're in overdraft relationally, that's kind of the opposite of having a very high account balance, right? They'll spontaneously go out of their way to aggravate you, right? How do I frustrate my parent? How do I make this harder? How do I push their buttons? And so on. So I think about this a lot, and I really want my account balance as high as possible with my kid in order to make everything easy. So how do we get to a point where we have a high account balance? If the account balance is goodwill, then deposits are times when I show my kid that I care about him and or that I respect him. It all comes down to these two things. And the rest of the time that I talk here, which hopefully will not be much longer, will be about specifics of how to show care and respect. But it kind of comes down to that. And the way that I withdraw from the account is by showing that I don't care about my kid, by showing my kid, I don't really care about you, or by showing my kid, I don't really respect you. Or by asking or requiring my child to inconvenience himself, to do something that he wouldn't normally do. Inconveniencing is something that happens in the course of normal relationships. It's not just okay, it's necessary, right? We do things for each other that we wouldn't do if the other person didn't exist, right? That's okay. But we want to be mindful of how much withdrawing we're doing by request for inconveniencing, and especially of how much withdrawing we're doing unnecessarily by showing lack of respect or lack of care. And the reason that goodwill is so important is all this stuff here at the bottom, right? When there's more goodwill in the relationship, when my child has more goodwill toward me, he trusts me more. He'll do more of what I ask, right? He'll cooperate. He'll be honest with me. He'll tell me things that may be scary for him to share. He'll put more effort into work that we do together that I ask of him. He'll forgive me when I make mistakes, right? And you can see how the opposite of all this is true when relational balance is really low, and when there's very little goodwill. I make a mistake, he's going to hold a grudge forever and lord it over me, right? Will not trust me with sensitive things. Will not cooperate with me when I ask, right? So goodwill is just so central in my mind. It's really the pillar of the relationship. Everything flows from it. Here's an example, and you could probably think of many more, but these are the ones that I work with the most. When I work with parents, when I work with teachers, all the behaviors that you can use to just drop little coins into the relational bank account, just throughout the day. And I'll say in general that in order to have a high account balance, in my opinion, the best way to get there is to make constant small deposits, not enormous deposits every great while, right? It's not about buying a car every few years for your kid or a car equivalent for a younger child, right? It's about just during the day, just dripping in whatever we can. So there are lots of things here. I'm just going to pick a few that I personally really like and I think are very easy, and are also potential pitfalls, like easy ways to lose points if you're just not thinking about it. So one is thanking kids, right? Just not taking them for granted, like taking a second to thank them when they do something that genuinely merits a thank you, right? But just turning around saying, I really appreciate that you took the trash out, thank you. Or saying, thank you for cleaning up your room so nicely. Or saying, whatever it is, but just taking a second to do that, it makes a big difference. Small. Explaining the benefit to the child. So whenever you're asking your child to do something, ideally most of the time you're asking them to do things that are beneficial to them, for them. And so taking the time to be explicit about why that is can make a big difference. I'll share a story from today. So today in the morning, I met my kid and he's 4.5. And so he was wearing his shoes on the wrong side, which he often does. And it just looks weird, right? I mean, it's pointing the wrong way. It's easy to see. And I tell him, your shoes are on the wrong legs. Do you want to switch them around? And he says what he always says for the past year. He says, I like them like that. And today I had more time and kind of, maybe I was preparing for this meeting today that we're having now. And so it was kind of on my mind. So I just slowed down and I said, do you know why I'm suggesting that we switch the shoes on the feet? And he said, no. And I said, well, look at my toes. And I showed him my foot. I took my foot out of my shoe and I said, do you see how they're shorter on this side and they're longer on this side? He said, yeah. And I said, now look at the shoe. And I put the wrong shoe next to it. And I said, do you see how it crams, right? The big toes are now on the short side and you all get it. You're grown-ups. I'm sorry. I'm explaining to you like you're 4. So he got it. And I said, and I don't want it to cram your toes. It can hurt and it can make the nail grow poorly. And then it can hurt you when the nail grows bad. He didn't even say anything. He just took the shoes off and switched them around. Like it was a non-issue, but it was a conversation, right? And so I took the time to explain why this is good for him, this thing that I'm requiring not requiring, requesting him to do, right? Because many times in the past I requested, and he said no. And I was like, okay, it's not an irreparable mistake, so I'm not going to sacrifice relationship. I'm not going to force him to do it. This time I just slowed down and took the time to explain it. This is at a 4-year-old level, right? But you can do this at a 16-year-old level and at a 28-year-old level and at a 38-year-old level too, when you have other people that you need to manage in your life, right? Slowing down and explaining why this is a good idea for them, how this is helping them, making it explicit that we're actually on their team, on their side. This is why we're doing it. And being explicit about these things, I'll get to it in a minute, but that's probably one of the most important underlying principles, just being explicit about how we mean well and what we do is for them. Respectful redirecting, that's a place where a lot of people I see a lot of people stumbling there. So I skipped down here. Respectful redirects. So redirects or directions is when you tell people to do things or to do things different than what they're doing right now. And it's very easy to do it in a way that the other person can hear as disrespectful. And it's just unnecessary, right? Like you can say, like, turn it off. Or you can say, not there, not there, not there. Put it next to the, right? Like that kind of stuff. And these are all small withdrawals and just unnecessary. Right. And so if we can catch ourselves in these moments, and instead of saying not there, put it next to the, to say, could you please put it next to the blah, blah. And that's it. Like really, that's all it takes. So it takes a second of awareness, but it's an easy way to plug leaks. A lot of relational leaks happen because people make these small withdrawals without realizing that they're doing it. Right. And so treating your child as if your child has power, and not somebody that you want to just kind of offhand potentially insult, makes a big difference in terms of, again, plugging these relational leaks. Consulting is another one of these big picture important things. So involving your child as much as possible to the extent your child is ready developmentally, asking for your child's opinion and taking it into consideration seriously, from, what shall we eat today to what are we going to do on Saturday? How much time do we want to spend with Aunt Mary? Where are we going this summer? Like at whatever level, which socks do you want to wear today? Again, for the younger ones, and right. But as much as possible, giving them power, because the underlying reality for most kids, the defining feature of being a child is not having power. Right. And they want power so much. All of us want to have the ability to self-determine. And kids don't have that. That's the definition essentially of being a child society, is you don't get to decide. You don't have a voice. Your grown-up decides for you. And if you're lucky, you get a good grown-up. And so a lot of times the reason that kids will push against parents is because they're trying to assert their power. They're trying to have a sense of more power. There are many ways to do it. Objecting to what you say is a way of testing how much power I have. Saying something that pushes your buttons and makes you go crazy is a way for me to feel like I have some power over you, right? If I can push your button, then I definitely have a power over you. But if you give your kid a lot of power, your kid has very little reason to fight against you and to try to create or assert or amass more power, because they're not missing anything. Right? You're not there to fight. There's no reason to fight over power if you're sharing it generously. And so the more you can show your kid that you respect your kid's opinion, seek your kid's opinion, take it into consideration, and act on it, the more you can do this, the better. The more they feel like you're respecting their power, right? And less clashes need to happen. And then on the nonverbal, there's a lot of stuff here. And I find that a lot of it is really hard to modulate intentionally, right? Some people are very good at intentionally creating certain looks or tones of voice and so on. For me, it's very hard. And so I usually work from the inside out rather than from the outside in, right? So I'd rather, I start by just focusing, one tasking, right? Never, once I decide that a time is a time together, then it's just time together, right? All distractions are to the side. Not all the time can be this kind of intense together time, obviously, right? But to at least have times in your week that are only with each other together, makes a big difference in terms of the amount of attention that your child feels from you. I have plenty of friends for whom the kids are kind of something to manage, and they enjoy their times with them, but they also have lots of other important things that they need to be doing. And, and once they start setting days aside that are just times to be with their kids, the tenor of the relationship changes. Special time, quality time, people call it different things, right? But having times when it's just all of your attention on the child, sustained for a long time, like you would with a friend who's allergic to phones, right? All of your attention on your child makes an enormous difference. And if you have to break it, again, treat it like you would it with an adult. Apologize, say like, oh, here's a call from Uncle Rob, do you want to talk with Uncle Rob? No, then Uncle Rob can wait. Or to say like, this is a call that I need to take. This is really important. This will take me a few minutes. Okay, I apologize. But making it really clear that you're shifting away, and then making it really clear, coming back saying, okay, I'm done with that. Where were we? So one tasking, being present. Some general tips. We're approaching the finish line. So one is, I mentioned before, just constant, ideally small deposits during the day. Right, just find all the different opportunities to say thank you, to be respectful, to ask for opinions, to whatever it is, just throughout the day. Consulting as much as possible with your child, letting your child self-determine and even determine for other people as part of a group making decisions. If you do have things that you're trying to change in your child's behavior, be very picky about what it is that you're going to spend relationship points on, right? Don't have too many open fronts at once. If you want your child to do this chore and to shower and to do homework and to be nicer to his sister, pick one, basically. Don't try to do everything at once because you're just going into overdraft, right? So think carefully about how you're managing your relationship points, and one at a time also gets you in this momentum of collaboration. In general, when teaching your child anything or asking your child to do anything differently than before, be very happy with any kind of improvement that happens, right? If your child is doing even a little better than before, congratulations, you're well ahead of the game, right? Don't withhold your compliments until you get perfection. Don't withhold your approval and approbation until you get perfection. Perfection is a long way off, right? Celebrate every little improvement. And this way you're, again, depositing right back into the relationship that you withdrew from by requiring the improvement. Minimum withdrawals. There are so many times, this is really worth thinking about, and ideally asking people around you, if somebody's present when you're interacting with your kids, if you have somebody else there, just to ask, like, are there moments when it feels like I'm being a little harsh, or, when I'm less nice than something, because sometimes we just don't know, right? And it just doesn't occur to us that we could say please at a thing, because that's just how we talk. And like, to us, it's clear that it's a request and that we're nice, and maybe to the other person it isn't. So just thinking about where are the moments where we are showing something like disrespect to our child. Is it necessary? Can we do it a little bit differently? I don't mean fawning over them, right? I just mean avoiding unnecessary harshness or withdrawals. A big one is when your kids set boundaries. Emergencies aside, respecting these boundaries. If a child says not now, to say, okay, I hear, now's not a good time. When would be a good time? Or to say, that's fine, we'll talk about it, over dinner or whatever, right? Or if your child says, I hate this, I don't want to do this, say, okay, I'm not going to force you. Can we talk about why I think it's a good idea? I'm not going to force you, but can we talk about why this is, in my opinion, a good idea? And just, right? But I'm asking permission. I'm not just crashing through their boundary. Because how would you feel if you told somebody no and they just said, I don't care that you said no. Actually, it doesn't feel good. Okay. And then lastly, of course, remembering to take care of yourself. This is a big part of sustainable parenting. This is not exactly what I do when I'm taking care of myself. I prefer a different color toenail polish, but whatever it is that fills your battery. And we had a different session here on self-care. You can look for that on the Parent Venture YouTube channel too. but make sure that you are taking time to fill your battery, because it's, I mean, you're a person too, right? And it's impossible for us to constantly be supporting and helping and kind and thoughtful, and right, when we're not taking time to help ourselves. I realize that just saying take care of yourself is sort of like telling people just exercise more. That's not the actual like helpful advice, but just to keep it on your mind. And if you are interested, like, go get more in-depth advice about how to take good care of yourself if that's something that is hard for you to figure out where to fit in or how to do, right? So look at the Parent Venture for the session that we have there. Google it, you know, do whatever you need, but really remember to prioritize yourself as well. Lastly, big picture stuff. Sort of if you remember nothing else, remember, I hope, one of these, which is, one is to be present with your child at least some of the time, right? Pick times in advance, put them in your calendar if you need to, and just be there with your child, fully present, no distractions. There is no gift like the gift of attention. It's such a precious gift that sometimes kids will do things that they know will aggravate you to get your angry attention, just because they want the attention. Right? And if they can get your loving attention and your happy attention, so much more wonderful, right? So just make some time to give your kid your undivided attention. So that's one. Two, be explicit with your kids. So when you're doing something that is for them, tell them lovingly and nicely, not just I'm doing this for your own good, but take the time to explain how this is helping them, right? I know you want to get into this school, you know, and I did some research, and you know what I found out? They're really into people that can grow basil plants. And so here's why this is so important to pay attention in your horticulture class or whatever. But, you know, your shoes are on the wrong foot. You know, the reason I'm suggesting that we replace them is because I'm worried that it'll cram your toenail, and that can really hurt later. And I don't, at whatever level, wherever they are in life, explain what it is that's motivating you to make that suggestion or that request, including if it's something that you need for yourself. That's okay too, just be honest, right? I just really need some help around the house. There's a lot of stuff that I'm doing for you, and I want to keep doing it, but I'm just exhausted. And so it would be a huge help for me if you could help with these two things, so I can keep carting you around to all of your various extracurricular. And similarly, on the be explicit front, also it's a good idea to be explicit about just how positively moved you are by your child. If your child does something really impressive, say, I'm really impressed. If your child does something really nice, say, I'm really moved. That was super kind of you. And if your child says something really funny, then say, that was hysterical. You know, I kept thinking about it throughout the day, and I laughed like since last time when you said it, and it's been 2 days now, and people at work think I'm crazy or whatever it is. But share back with your kid and let your kids see that they can move you positively, because that's a button you want them to press. Have all the power over me that you want. I'll happily give you the power to make me smile, right? And then you feel like you have some power over me too. Great. Okay. Default to following. This is possibly a whole separate session, but this is a phrase that I learned from a friend of mine. And I think it's a very wise idea, right? If there's no pressing reason to tell everybody what to do, just don't. Just see what your child wants to do and do that. Right? As much as possible, follow the child. Right? Default to following the child. And sometimes you'll need to lead. And in those times, step forward. But you know, it doesn't need to be always the parent show. Right? And it doesn't need to be always the parent as producer show. Like, ask the child, what do you want to do and how can we do it? And again, depending on the age of the child can produce a lot of it with your support. Or if your child says, I'm tired, you do it, you decide or you lead, then fine. Then, but as much as possible, follow. Where do you want to go eat? You know, do you want to go to the park? What do you want to do today? Would you like to, whatever it is, follow. And follow up. This is a fun thing. And I think everybody really appreciates this, including very young kids. If something is happening in the future that someone tells you about, if your kid says, I have a big test coming up on Monday, put it in your calendar if you need to ask on Monday, how did the test go? It's simple stuff. If they tell you, my friend Karen is having surgery and I'm worried about her, say, when is it? And they'll say sometime in May. Say, do you know what day? I guess, yeah, the 20th. Put it in your calendar. Ask them about Karen. Know the specifics and act on them. And then in a smaller way, follow-ups. If they tell you that there's something they're interested in or they want to do, see if you can make it happen, right? It's a big deal. If there's a particular, I don't know, topic that they want to learn about, or a park that they want to visit, or whatever it is, like, just set aside time to do the research. Maybe set aside an hour a month, Saturday between 11 and 12, put it on your calendar again, or whenever, right? And just have a list, write things down. Don't be embarrassed. Nobody remembers anything anymore, right? Have a list of things to think about. I have my list of things to research for my 4-year-old son, right? I'm looking for an elevator that has windows, like an external elevator that goes really high up. If anybody knows of one in Connecticut, please tell me, because he loves the 2-floor one that we found in the train station recently. Okay, I think that's it. The URL for these slides is at the bottom here, and we'll put it in the chat as well for those of you that want to download it. There's a class that covers all of this kind of stuff and then goes more in depth, and we do a lot of exercises around this stuff, and you can see the class and you can see recordings of other types of sessions and the blog and all of that at parentingforhumans.com. I'm not spending a lot of time on this today because I want to get to the discussion. I'm going to stop the share, and we will in a minute stop the recording, and then we can have a conversation about whatever you'd like to talk about, possibly inspired by what I just said.
Thank you so much, Eran. That was really fantastic. And parents, I want you to know that whether your kid is, as Eran said, 5 or 15 or 35, like mine, making these deposits daily and really making your kids feel integrated into your life and appreciated is really the ticket to making things work.